Go. Go ahead.
You comfortable? I was making sure you're
Yeah, I'm fine.
situated. All right.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Josh,
I'm Joe.
and this is DM Tips episode 3.
Yes,
Three.
three.
Yeah.
Three, because there's a 0 1.
And today we're talking about, or we're going to be discussing how to deal with the party's reputation in your setting.
Yes.
That's
How do we go about doing that?
a good question.
That's a great
I
question.
haven't actually thought about it yet.
Well,
So all these thoughts are going to be free flowing.
Yes.
So,
Like a
uninhibited.
Jackson Pollock painting.
Yeah. I typically have the party be, when I start the campaign, my party is a bunch of nobodies.
Yes.
They don't have a reputation, and basically their actions will build their reputation, essentially.
Right.
I've had players that wanted to be a famous character.
Oof.
Not from the beginning, but that was their kind of persona. Is
Yeah.
they wanted to always be known as the hero.
Right.
And everywhere they went, they would announce their presence, and they would be like, "Do you know who I am?" Yada yada yada, and no one would ever know them.
All I can think is Godfather. Do you know how?
Now, if they do that over time, if they return to the same area, and they're constantly just in people's faces saying, "Remember my face," stuff like that, they're gonna be remembered. Not in the way they're wanting to be remembered. They're going to be remembered as an annoyance. If anything.
Yes.
But I feel like as far as NPCs treat the party based on their actions more than what they say.
Yeah.
Now, you giving a speech is an action
Yes.
in and of itself. So
Mm-hmm.
it won't be like, oh, everything they say doesn't matter. The way they say it is also going to matter more than
Yes.
than what the context
That's where,
of the saying is anyway.
charisma roles go into play.
Right.
Diplomacy roles. That's basically where all that stuff comes into play.
Right, and even if the party's not expecting to be noticed or remembered in a certain area, it's always fun to have NPCs either that they've met before or at least have heard of these people if they've done maybe heroic deeds or even horrific deeds. They could be welcomed with open arms, or they could be feared greatly because of how evil they are, or how big of a klutz they are, I guess I should say as well.
Well, what you
Because you
want...
could have party members that are just haphazard and fuck things up all the time.
Yeah.
So
What you don't want to do is first level and first time you're playing, let them be known characters, because that's just bad. This has to happen like when they're level 5. Unless you have a character at first level who wants to play the hero constantly. At some point,
I'm not going to say you should never do that. There's times and places.
shouldn't.
In a fantasy setting, there's probably a good idea not to have them, just to have them be nobodies.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe you're playing a game that's like sort of like a Hunger Games type campaign, where the people that are selected as the players are going to be kind of famous among all the NPCs because they're being like broadcasters.
Yeah,
I've never read or seen the Hunger Games movies, so this is all just my brain canon.
No, well...
But isn't it just like a broadcasted fucking free-for-all?
Yeah, but it's all like...
and shit?
It's all first level characters.
Right.
I mean, most of the time it is, most of the time it isn't. When you're a first level character, I wouldn't recommend it. If you're like third or fourth down the line, then your character...
Right.
You can do it. I just want to recommend it for first level because you run into so many problems at that point in time, because then what you want the reputation of the party to be is eventually people don't start anything with them. You want the party reputation of, all right, we can skip like basically going into a bar and getting attacked.
Right. Or maybe you're playing a character that has sort of a small past or an issue with another NPC, but only in like the starting area. Let's say you're all start from the same village or whatever, and one guy's known to be kind of a smart ass all the time, and even though he's never actually interacted in game yet with an NPC, and goes to like a store or whatever, and then the store owner's just like, hey, don't give me a hard time, just get your shit and get out of here. I don't want to talk to you because you're a pain in the ass due to past experiences. But I think it's always way more fun for both me as the DM and for the players to build their own reputation.
Yeah, because the problem is that you're defeating the purpose of the first level being a known character.
Right.
You want to build that reputation up, and then even some systems there is reputation points that you get along the way. And what you want to do as a game master, as far as that's concerned, is when the reputation gets so big again, you can't. No one's going to screw with them in a bar. No one's going to pick a fight with them in the streets. Now, when they're second, first to third level characters, people will do that because they're unknown quantities. And sometimes having a party that isn't a known quantity is probably, it can be fun too, because then you can throw stuff at them and they beat the crap out of them in the middle of town square, and everyone's like, "Oh, who are these guys?"
Right.
And that'll help the reputation go along, but I wouldn't recommend it starting out because it defeats the purpose of basically building a party up. And there may be times where you're like, the reputation is poisonous, and you as a GM are like, well, yeah, if you came back to this area, they knew that you guys were bad dudes, so no one's going to screw with you, and now we're going to sit here for 3 hours because I have nothing to do. You want to make sure that the reputation, there's some flaws to it. You have to, for all the good of the reputation of not being able to...
Yeah, as a DM, because this is all about DM tips, we don't really care much about the players most of the time, but the most fun is when you can embarrass a player by bringing up a past fuck-up. That's seriously one of the most fun things, is when you're like, goodness. Oh, hey, this NPC comes back, and someone that they hit and quit one night, and then they end up like telling like everyone in the town knows them as being like, one pump chump or something like that, or they're just terrible and bad, or maybe they just have a reputation for being stinky. I don't know. You just anything you can get them to be embarrassed is always fun, because then they're just like, I don't have any way to defend myself. I mean, you got me. Yeah. I did that. But it also kind of is even before when a new player wants to play. Sometimes I've had players that want to bring a background story for their character, which is never a good idea in my opinion. I never allow people to do that because I never allow it because
I disagree.
Well, my opinion is that if a player has a background story or a pre-established lore for that character, and it's cool, they're never going to live up to it. Because very rarely do players do things cool on purpose. It's always an accident, and then it's awesome. So I've had people come into play and they're like, "Oh, well, I want to be just a regular person, but I also have a demon that possesses me, and then my mother was a jackal, and my father was a..." It's like, who gives a shit about that stuff? Because you're going to have to constantly tell people about that, and you're going to have to expect them to give a shit, when in reality, nobody's going to give a shit about that stuff because it's so fucking played out and cliche.
Backgrounds.
It's better I think it's better for players, letting your players play the character as though they have no background. But then once they kind of get the feel for the character and you get a feel for the player, and you see what habits they have as that player and as that character, habits are hard to break. So you can kind of guess what their background would be at that point after you've seen what they've done for the past month or so.
I disagree. I've used and have had my background used against me. And if you build... Well, you can't let... Like you said, like the half-jackal mother was a drug addict, dad beat me and left and got killed by like the big bad. That stuff... No. You want a character to have maybe not a rich background, but a background that you can be like, okay, that makes sense. Because then you can come back to them and say, listen, you're not playing the character like you wrote down, like we agreed to. Or you could have family members or past members that end up becoming the NPC. I totally disagree with that, and it's your choice of how you want to play. But to me, having a good background, maybe a small background.
Very slight that doesn't have any impact on almost anything. I think the less
totally
impact...
disagree.
Now, you can provide a background later on. For example, I have a player right now that's playing a Slayer class in Pathfinder. And the Slayer class essentially studies their target and gains bonuses to that target by studying them, and then takes them out or whatever they want to do with them. And I've noticed that player doesn't talk much and doesn't really like any of the other characters in the game necessarily. And I've thought a background story for that character at this point because of their lack of talking to anyone and also their skill in studying people and noticing patterns. I was going to create a background story where essentially they were orphaned at a young age.
Of course. In
the orphanage. They didn't really like the faculty of the orphanage. And over a series of weeks or months maybe, or even years, they've orchestrated how to take out faculty they didn't like, up to the point where they got caught by someone who was sort of on their side and basically took them in as almost like a a Dexter's father type thing from the show, where he has them take out only bad people and stuff, something like that. But basically, they're in the orphanage because. And they don't talk to anyone because they didn't trust any of the people they were supposed to trust. So they don't trust anyone. They have trust issues, obviously. So that's what that stemmed from. So basically what their habits and what their flaws are now had to stem from something. And then you can kind of... It's easier to make a background story that they're already sticking to than it is to give them a background story that they're not going to stick to. Because like if you make a character that's a paladin... And you're like, oh, you were the best paladin in the order, and you were promoted.
No. That's not what I'm saying. But you are right.
They're just they're a fuck up the whole time, and they beat people up for fun. It's like that's not a paladin. What the hell?
What I'm suggesting is to have
give them and us or me.
Right.
This is all for me. I just give me an example of a background story that you would give somebody.
I would give someone a background story of having the ideally perfect nuclear family, and then use that against them later on. You don't have to have massive background.
Of course they have that. Yes, here's your background. You were born at some point.
Okay, your background is he's an orphan. Everyone's an orphan.
Well, no, that was just
But that's the most cliche thing.
I could have had abusive parents or abusive faculty. That was the only one to do. I wasn't going to have them commit matricide and fucking fratricide or patricide.
No, but that's what I'm saying is that I had a character, and maybe this will help explain it. I had a character I just wrote down like, he has a sister. It's for Cyberpunk. That's why I had you guys write down, because Josh is in a campaign with me with Cyberpunk and Heroes Unlimited, and I had a character that basically just had an estranged relationship with his sister. That's fine. That came back to bite him in the ass immensely at the end of that campaign when he didn't trust his sister but trusted the villain, and then the villain, on my character's orders, mind-wiped the sister. And then, boom. She was done, and then that's when we revealed, oh yeah, he's really the bad guy. That's incredible.
I think it's a good idea to, if your character does have past relationships, whether they're family or friends or anything like that, you make sure that the player is aware of those relationships before you bring them back. For example, I played in campaigns where I didn't give a shit about my background story before I started level 1, and I was playing this character. All of a sudden, I run into my brother, and I was like, okay, well, what the fuck do I do? Do I embrace him and be like, hey, long time no see, or do I punch him in the fucking face because he screwed me over in the past, or am I like, holy shit, you're alive? Or I don't know. So I think it's a good idea to establish that before you introduce past relationships, bring up past relationships.
If you're going to have past relationships, if you're going to have a background, make sure that you can go the easy way, which is orphan. Because then you don't have to deal with anything. Or
that's why I did it.
Yeah, orphan is like
this was specific to the
laziest thing.
Okay. I did it because
I don't mean you. Like, look at every hero. Orphan.
He's not an orphan.
Which origin story?
Okay, it's close to an orphan. But I mean, his original origin.
The orphan.
His original origin story.
The orphan.
Okay, well.
But no, I mean, if
not everyone's Batman, Joe.
Except for me. Anyway, what you want to do is, if you do have it, just make sure that you have your background sheet with you, and then check off whether or not that character, your brother or sister, father, brother, aunt, uncle, is basically estranged or not. And that's simple, easy stuff that you can do. Making a background really can only take 10 minutes. People who spend days on that background.
I think establishing the relationships you have with your past acquaintances and friends and family is maybe something to do out of game beforehand.
I think it's better just to surprise them.
I think that's a terrible idea.
No, because then you get the real emotion of that player. Like
confusion every single time?
Yep.
Hey, it's that guy you knew from 10 years ago. What the fuck did we do?
But if you had your background written down right beside you, you would know.
Okay, that's what I mean. You establish the background out of game beforehand.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
For relationships.
Okay. I thought you meant
as far as like reputation though. You don't really have a reputation outside of your past acquaintances though.
No, you don't want to have like a reputation like the big bad already knows who you are. That's just a bad idea.
Right.
Let me give you another example of reputation. A lot of people like to play a lot of established RPGs like Star Wars, Star Trek, Lord of the Rings, Warcraft. I guess some of the Warcraft characters are kind of named in their bios. I really don't like doing that because, one, occasionally you might screw up continuity, especially with Star Wars and Lord of the Rings. Star Trek is a little easier because there could be a mission where Kirk and crew did something that was part of the, after they got canceled and before they got the refit, and so on and so forth. Once you play those characters, you have to deal with the reputation. Remember Force Awakens when Han walks into the bar and they're like, "Hey, Han Solo," and everyone stops? That has to happen every time. Those characters are too important not to have reputations. You can't have frickin' James T. Kirk go into the Federation and then try to infiltrate from inside. Everyone knows who he is. He saved the planet like 700 times. You can't do that. Same thing with Star Wars at a certain point in time. Everyone knows who Han is. Everyone knows who Luke is, especially after he blows up the Death Star. People know this. Like, you can't have Vader walk in the room like, "Hey, who's that guy?" Like, no.
Right.
If you're going to have a campaign like that, and you as the game master, if you decide, let's say you're playing something like Lord of the Rings, and Saruman shows up. And no one knows who that is. Kind of hard not to know because he's the most powerful wizard this side of Sauron or Gandalf. People are going to know who this dude is, so you have to play them correctly at that point in time. If you're going to use characters that are well established in any universe, depending on the time period, some of them are going to be known. It's easy to use like a Luke Skywalker that's before A New Hope and maybe have an adventure with him that nobody knows about, and that's fine. But you can't use Luke Skywalker at the end of Return of the Jedi. Everyone knows who he is. He's on wanted posters.
Yeah.
And so are your characters in these campaigns. At some point in time, your characters are going to be on wanted posters.
Yes. It's all you always want to make sure that if you're going to be revisiting areas with the same party, they are remembered in some way. Otherwise, the players aren't going to really give a shit too much about that place.
And like we established in, I think, episode
it also gives your party options to fall back on. Like if you're fleeing something, you can be like, "Oh, we were at this village nearby that I'm pretty sure is nearby. We made friends there. We have a place to stay."
Yeah,
stuff like that. And if they write that stuff down, boom, that's lore.
Yeah,
that's basically how I treat reputation among lore and stuff. Is if anyone writes shit down or I remember it the next week, it's canon.
Yeah.
So.
And that's what you have to do. You have to basically make sure that a lot of it's world building. We've kind of touched on world building, but when you're building whatever world you want to, you got to make sure that the characters themselves help you with that world building. They are the ones that are going to be creating the new legends of lore for your world.
Unless you're playing in a pre-established universe like Star Wars or Warcraft or whatever,
and even
they're kind of already in a already shaped world, and they're just kind of they're dealing with stuff going on in that. Wow, there's also these titans of reputation that you cannot really fuck with because they are sort of the heroes of another story, and you just have to try and find a way for your characters to become heroes without pissing off people that love continuity.
Well, the thing is, too, is you can insert those characters into that kind of world. There's been plenty of times where, hey, you show up at the Battle of the Death Star 2, because, Death Star 1, kind of all of the ships are named. Death Star 2, it's a giant fleet, and, the commandos aren't named and everything else. You could Battle of Hoth, easy one to do. Star Trek, there's, Wolf 359. Well, no, you don't want to do that because everyone got fucking massacred. But, like in First Contact when they fight the Borg, your ship can be there, and maybe it gets screwed up by the Borg cube. But your actions, all those ships end up helping destroy the Borg cube.
Yeah.
You can do stuff like that. Little things that help the party. Like in Lord of the Rings, you can be there at the final battle.
Even if you do a pre-established lore character introduction or anything like that, it's a good idea to make... You don't have to, I guess. I mean, you are the DM. You really can do whatever you want. But it might be a good idea to establish that this is going to be as close to canon as possible, or if hey, you can just walk up to Luke Skywalker and shoot him in the face with a blaster and kill him.
And there are timelines that basically do that.
So
you have to establish those rules early. Like in Star Trek, you can play a mirror campaign where everyone's freaking evil, or you can play
Like don't catch your party off guard by having them find the Millennium Falcon. They walk in and Chewie's going down on Han Solo. Or
Oh, wait a minute. What kind of gross...
I'm just saying, don't have them be like, whoa, what the fuck? This isn't canon. This is really bizarre.
This is fan
Don't
fiction.
throw them on weird stuff like that.
No.
At least unless you're all into that sort of thing, and then be like, hey, by all
And that's a
means-
different type of role playing that I do not want to get into.
You just want to make them aware of what to expect, sort of.
Yeah, you can have alternate timelines where you can say, all right, Frodo didn't get the ring, you happened upon it because they all got murdered at the end of
and that's actually that's always fun too, to explore like what if sort of campaigns where you will encounter the same heroic characters from the canon, but they're doing other things because Flashpoint happened.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So
talk about Flashpoint.
Frodo died, you got the ring instead, and suddenly Gimli is half elf or something.
Yeah, weird crap like that. Whatever was going on in The Hobbit. Useless bullshit. Anything else that we want to say about it, or have we kind of covered it? I
like to at least provide anecdotes at the end of these videos.
I already used mine.
So I think I did mine too.
So
reputation. I know. Okay, here's a reputation anecdote. I got a player in my Pathfinder campaign who is maybe 5 levels higher than everyone else at this point.
Yeah, he is.
Because I run a campaign where sometimes people don't make it that night, or they just get bored with a character, or they die often, and the party level is anywhere between 2 and 15 sometimes at the same time.
Yeah.
So it's difficult for me to balance the campaign and stuff, but that's a different story. But
that's another one we could do.
Essentially, when there's a character that's been in the game for so long, and they revisit places and they've been heroes and stuff, I've had one that was promised to be given the throne. He's been named the heir of the king, even though the king was immortal.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the king is mortal now, and stuff like that, and they have to. And his son shows up, and there's a and he has to bring up the fact that he was named heir, and all this stuff, and then there's a succubus demon that he's been dealing with this whole time that shows up every once in a while, and every time I mention the succubus's name, this guy fucking flips out. Shit's about to get fucked up. But people will recognize him a lot whenever he goes to different places he's been. He's always recognized. He's a good character. So they're always like they know a hero when they see one, and he's recognized almost immediately most of the time. Whereas I've had other players that will go, like I said, go into town and be like, "Do you know who I am?" And then I'm the greatest person ever. And then whenever he shows up to a new place, he asks the same question. He gets the same response every time. No, I've never heard of you. You've never done anything other than just run your mouth.
Yeah.
So you might get a reputation for that, but not for any sort of heroic deeds.
No. What you want to do with all of these is basically you want to take everything into account. Especially people who run their mouths all the time, use that against them. So the reputation is a good thing and a bad thing. It's going to be up to you as a GM to decide how you want to use it. It could be a good thing for you, basically like, well, everyone knows them, and now I can lay traps for them.
Right, and if you're playing with a type of character that tries to steal every single thing they see whenever someone's back is turned, give them a bad reputation for being a thief, and have them go to the next town and saw there's like wanted posters up, make it ridiculous fucking rewards and
50,000 gold.
That's if you want to deter that sort of behavior, though. Or make them at least aware of the fact.
Or get rid of that character.
Or make them aware of the fact that they're not doing it well enough to not get caught, because they're aware of them stealing. So that's really all I have to say, though. Yeah,
I think what you want to do with the reputation for your party is just don't hold it always against them too, because it's easy for you to be like, okay, now they're 3rd or 4th level, now they can go into a town and then they can be attacked for who they are.
Right.
Yes and no. Like I said, 5th or 6th level when they can handle that kind of stuff, but you can start laying the groundwork for traps. What you really want to do with the reputation of like, oh, I know you, and maybe you meet a random barmaid in one town, you find her in another town, and suspiciously she seems to be going everywhere you're going. So.
Right. It's difficult to avoid the whole Chekhov's gun situation. If you're like, oh, hey, you see this woman again.
Yeah.
Not suspicious at all. It's very difficult to make it not suspicious when it's going to be suspicious later on. But I also think it's a good idea to have the reputation in your game, because if there's one thing players like talking about that no one likes listening to, is them telling stories about how great their character is. Rather than having to put up with that nonsense, just role play it. Let an NPC be like, hey, I know what you did before. That was pretty awesome, or that was pretty fucking terrifying.
Yeah.
That way your player can be like, oh, the DM remembers that. I don't need to fucking run my mouth later on and be like, hey, remember that time I did this, this, and this? Yes, we fucking remembered as a DM. That's our whole fucking job. So here's your 5 minutes of fame.
Yeah.
Leave me alone. Don't call me up in the middle of the night and be like, hey, man, so I was thinking because I killed all those ogres and shit. I don't give a fuck. I don't give a fuck at this point. You're not the DM.
You have a very once that someone leaves the table, you are done with them.
I'm absolutely fucking done with it. Yeah, absolutely.
I will say that I think the biggest thing for me with the reputation is if you use pre-existing characters. I mean, you can't run a Marvel or DC world and basically not know who Spider-Man is. He's faces all over the Daily Bugle, and Superman's faces all over the Daily Planet.
Right.
And you have to play those characters accordingly because there's a certain reputation with those pre-existing characters. And even characters, let's say, that you would use that someone says, hey, I'm retiring this character, and you bring him back. There's a certain reputation and a sort of expectation from the players of, hey, we're going to meet this guy or that guy. You can't make Superman a jerk. Let me repeat that, fucking Zack Snyder. You can't make Superman a fucking jerk. So, anyway.
I think we covered most of it. If we missed anything, let us know in the comments.
Sure.
You have any suggestions or anything like that, leave them in the comments.
Yep.
But we'll have another episode soon.
You guys have an email?
Yeah, but who the fuck uses email anymore?
You have a Twitter?
Yeah, the Twitter's all going to be linked in
All
everything.
right, I just want to make sure.
Below the video where you should also comment. So all that's covered.
All right, just want to make sure.
Yeah, we don't have
I don't watch these things.
P.O. box yet or anything, but I don't watch them either. I just go for the comments. But thanks for watching. We'll next episode's probably going to be it's probably going to be differentiating between main quests and side quests, unless we get a better suggestion. But that's a pretty good one. So
Yeah,
we're probably going to cover that next time. But thanks for watching. Good night.